Oh, by Jove, it's you, old boy. Hey, how are you? Come on, come on. I think we've done it. I think we've cracked the case. Why all these gaming studios are hiring DEI consultants to come in and ruin all of their games. Let's jump in and take a look, shall we? Yes, that's right, bros. We've gotten to the bottom of it. And actually, the first clue in the investigation that we got was when a subsidiary of the United States Department of Homeland Security put out a document demanding that game companies denounce Gamergate too. What? What does a consumer boycott of a small DEI consultancy from Canada have to do with the United States government? Doesn't make sense. I mean, somehow it seems like the US government has a horse in this race. But why?
Why?
So that made me wonder if my own government here in Australia had a position on this issue as well. And lo and behold, it literally took like 15 seconds of internet searching to find this. An article published by the Australian Government Department of Industry, Science and Resources. It's titled Women and Girls in STEM. And it introduces us to this lovely lady named Cherie Davidson. And here's a lovely picture of the beautiful Cherie Davidson, hard at work in her home office, making the games. But I can't help but think there's something missing from this picture. Can't quite put my finger on it. Something seems missing. Yes, here it is. That's much better. Now she looks complete. And what a fine specimen she really is. So yeah, actually this is a fascinating article to have been published on an official Australian government website, a .gov.au website. If you told me this was Kotaku.com, I would have believed you. So yeah, it gives us a full history and a profile of who Cherie Davidson is. And it goes into a lot of detail about what it's like in the industry for women and neurodiverse people. But then, the villain appears. Cherie was just starting her career when the online harassment campaign known as Gamergate saw many women in the industry targeted by misogynistic abuse. It was alarming to see how quickly blatant misogyny spread in online circles and the backward justification for the behaviour that followed, Cherie says. Ironically, these events forced women and people of underrepresented genders to band together and create support networks that were, and still are, orders of magnitude more powerful than the temporary screeching of internet trolls. It taught me pretty early on that if I need allies, I'll be able to find them. So that's great. Cherie has lots of allies now in the gaming industry. But apparently that's not enough, because now we need a new paragraph to see how gaming can be improved, how diversity can be improved in gaming. And here's a key sentence here. Maybe most importantly, studios and funding bodies need to recognise the value of having underrepresented voices in key creative and leadership roles. Time and time again, we've seen creative directors from underrepresented groups find success by reaching underserved markets. So again, funding bodies. That's a peculiar way to phrase it. Who are these funding bodies that she speaks of? Well, and that's where this mystery gets cracked wide open. And it goes back to something that Grums said yesterday on the Quarterings stream. So I'll just play that.
They have an immense financial impact. The way games are funded, you don't use your own money. Even EA, okay? Games are hugely expensive to make. They're upwards of, $250, sometimes $600 million. For certain live games. It's incredibly how expensive they are. And to do that, your CFO is your best friend. You're counting on your CFO to get you tax breaks, to get you to put studios in regions which are financially favorable.
So the last part of what Grums said there about tax breaks and putting studios in regions which are financially favorable, that is the key. And so we have to ask, who gives out the tax breaks? Who gives out the grants to companies to make games? Who are the funding bodies that, again, Cherie Davidson talks about? Well, it turns out that those funding bodies, at least in part, are literally arms of the government itself. And what are the conditions that the government puts on you in return for receiving these tax breaks that are so necessary, as Grums puts it, and all the grants and the funding? Well, the conditions basically is that you hire a D.E.I consultancy to come in and put a chick in your game and to make it lame and gay. And I found a couple of examples, but there are literally dozens. But this one here is an emerging game makers fund by the Australian government, and they'll give you money up to 30k to make a game, but only if you can demonstrate that your game is for undeserved audiences and are developed and represent and are made by teams with diverse and underrepresented backgrounds and experiences. And it goes on further down. It's got a whole section on diversity and equity. And it goes on further down with a whole section about diversity, equity and inclusion, and all the boxes that you've got to tick to get funding. So, but what if 30k isn't enough? Don't worry, there are bigger grants available. But again, don't bother applying unless you're willing to pander at the altar of D.E.I. There's another one here. Same criteria. Literally from the Australian government. This one's $500,000. I mean, and that's not much. But then again, Australia isn't really known for its huge gaming industry. But what about the UK? Well, they also have a scheme to provide tax breaks to their gaming industry, which is much bigger. And guess what? The D.E.I requirements to claim that tax break are pretty much the same in Old Blighty as they are down under. So, there was an article on it. TaxWatch UK calls out Rocksteady for playing the system for video game tax relief. And they said here that Rocksteady claimed £60 million. See if I can find 60. Here we are. Warner Media, the parent company of Rocksteady, claimed 60 million. 60 million, says The Guardian. Well, that goes a long way to Grums's 200 million, 250 million. But again, to qualify for this UK government tax relief, you have to pass the cultural test and prove that your game demonstrates cultural diversity. There it is, cultural diversity again. And I found this interesting article here. by Ipsos, video games tax relief, and just some of the comments that they from the people. So one of the people who is likely to apply says, there is a perception that it has to be Union Jackie to get the fronts, but it's silly. I was worried that perhaps I had to make my game more English. It sounds silly now. Yeah, I know it sounds silly because it's actually exactly the opposite. You have to make your game less English to get the money and more culturally diverse. That's how you get the money. And there's just a few more comments down here. One guy, he says, look, our idea of making what we want is so strong that we don't care about the money that much. But however, let's say we're going to get back £50,000, but to do that, we'd have to change our audio guy. If he wasn't really, really good at his job, we'd consider that. I don't know what that's trying to imply there. I just hate the idea that someone might lose their job because of they're the wrong gender or their skin is the wrong color. Like, that sits wrong with me. If that's what the implication here is, and then another one says it would be foolish not to make a few subtle content changes to squeeze into the acceptance criteria. Now, well, yeah, I don't have to wonder too much about what sort of content changes you have to make to squeeze into the acceptance criteria, because we can see what sort of content changes they made in Rocksteady's last game, which was released last month, about a certain squad and a certain Justice League. And remember, Warner Bros. Claimed £60 million from this scheme. So that goes a long way to what Grums was saying in that clip about how games are so expensive to make. So anyway, guys, I think I'll leave it there. I think this is the smoking gun, which points to one of the major culprits in the wokeification of gaming being the government itself. But what do you think? Please let me know in the comments below. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you later.